So again, it's a great starting point, but there are still a lot of questions that we have with his proposal on immigration and DACA. We're going to have to work through that.
And it seems like the House and the Senate, at least the proposals we saw initially from the two houses, were so different. I mean, do you think that the lawmakers can bicamerally get together on something?
I think we can. I am very hopeful in this regard. DACA is not an issue that's owned by one side or the other, because we all agree that we need to find a solution for our dreamers. It's really important that we help that population move forward. But all of the other items that the president would like to see included, we have to come to a consensus on that. I think we can. Border security is really important to so many of us, and with that, I think we can work through this issue and find a resolution.
I want to read the quote that I referenced a little bit earlier about what you had to say about the president. You said, "I don't appreciate the rhetoric. What I can say is that I do support some of the policies that we're working on." How tough does the rhetoric part of what he does make your job?
Well, it is hard because he may be talking about other issues, and we've mentioned the
That's his work. Other outlets have reported that FBI Director Christopher Wray proposed demoting McCabe over the findings of the Inspector General. Among the subjects of FISA warrants described in the memo is Carter Page, who was affiliated with the Trump campaign as a foreign policy advisor of some sort. The Obama Justice Department argued before a federal judge, and the memo describes this, that Page was an active agent of a hostile foreign government, a spy for Vladimir Putin. More than a year later, that claim looks absurd. Ridiculous, actually, because it is. Page has never been indicted for spying for anybody. No evidence has surfaced at all to suggest that that's even close to true. By the way, if Page is a Russian agent, why isn't he in handcuffs right now? Why is he on MSNBC all the time? This is nuts. Yet on the basis of that nutty claim, the Obama Justice Department was able to secretly surveil the Trump campaign. Not a small thing. The memo also apparently shows that when the DOJ wanted to extend spying on Carter Page, they used information from the now discredited Steele dossier to make their case, if you can even imagine. That was the basis of their request to the federal judge to keep a spying program in place. As one person familiar with the memo puts it, quote, "The FBI has been steadily politicized for years. Now it's being exposed for efforts to undermine and delegitimize a political candidate." Now, we don't know if that's true. We haven't seen the memo or the documents that support it. Neither has almost anybody commenting on it. But these are serious allegations. They are more troubling than the underlying crime in Watergate, that's for sure. You don't have to be a Trump voter to understand why the political use of intelligence and law enforcement agencies can destroy a country almost faster than anything else can. Yet Democrats don't care. How do we know they don't care? We checked. As of tonight, according to House Intel Committee staff, about 190 Republicans in the House, outside the Intel Committee, have read that memo. Meanwhile, outside the committee, only about a dozen Democratic members have read it. What's interesting, amazing if you think about it, is that though only a few Democrats have bothered to read the memo, they are all, to a person, adamantly against releasing it. But it doesn't matter what they want. It looks like the rest of us will be able to make our own judgments about what's in that memo very soon. The House Intelligence Committee voted tonight to declassify it. According to our sources, the entire memo will likely be read into the congressional record early next week. Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and an NYPD officer, and he joins us tonight. Dan, it's great to see you.
Good to be here, Tucker.
So, I mean, my view from day one has been it's not about Trump, it's not about Obama, it's about the political use of our intel and law enforcement agencies. And what we learned today about the memo suggests that that has happened. They've been politicized.
Hey, Tucker, where are the Democrats on this? I thought this was the party of civil liberties.
Exactly.
This is, you do not have to be a Trump supporter to understand that the constitutional republic as we know it cannot continue to exist if the Fourth Amendment is subject to the R or the D in front of your name. Make no mistake, because the liberals are hiding now, and they're all scurrying like roaches when the lights come on. They know what happened here. To spy on someone in the United States is legal if you can produce probable cause using legal means of a crime, or that someone is acting on behalf of a foreign agent in violation of some United States crime. None of that has been produced to this day. Not a single Democrat, Republican, or anyone else has produced a scintilla of evidence that anyone on the Trump team, and we're not talking about process crimes later, colluded with the Russians to justify an investigation to spy into what at the time was a candidate for President of the United States of the opposing party. This is devastating. Where are the so-called civil libertarians?
So what could possibly be the rationale for not reading the memo? Under current House rules, any member of the House can go in. You have to go to a secure location. But if you're an elected member of the House, you can read it. Only a dozen Democrats out of more than 100 outside the committee have done that. How could they explain that?
Here's what's going on here. The way sensitive compartmentalized information works, the systems aren't interconnected, Tucker. So when I was saying a skiff that when I worked in the Secret Service, there's information on certain systems that's not connected to the cloud or the internet. It is in Tucker's place, right? For someone to read that, you have to go to Tucker's place. It is not a coincidence that Devin Nunes, who has an entire scope of what happened, went back in March to the White House facility to read very specific intel that I think is very likely will be in this memo. What am I saying by this? That information was likely briefed to Barack Obama. What does that mean? That means that this information that was being used by Hillary and all this other stuff that was in the dossier and all of this spying was probably being inserted into daily briefs by Barack Obama. Why else would Nunes have to go to the White House to read it? That's
a great point. And, of course, it was the Obama administration that pushed for the surveillance powers over the Trump campaign. Very quickly, is it plausible that Obama administration officials really believed that poor Carter Page, I'm sure you've seen him in his television appearances, was a Russian agent, was working for Vladimir Putin? Do you think they really believed that when they asked for the right to spy on him?
I believe when you think Donald Trump is Satan, you can convince yourself of absolutely anything.
That's probably exactly right. Nicely put and true. Dan, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Robert Mueller's Russia investigation has found very little evidence of the Russian collusion that supposedly justified it. It has, though, accidentally exposed a lot of political bias in the federal government. Now some of Donald Trump's campaign team say they're considering a lawsuit. Michael Caputo advised Trump's presidential campaign, and he joins us tonight. Michael, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Let me do diligence and ask you the obvious question. During your time serving the Trump campaign, did you see any behavior that suggested collusion or inappropriate contact with the Russian government?
No, I did not. In fact, I'll tell you exactly what I told the House Intelligence Committee in July. I saw no Russian collusion. I heard no talk of Russia. No one ever asked me about the years that I lived in Russia, the whole time I was in Trump Tower, and we didn't use Russian dressing. This whole thing is a bogus investigation ginned up because Hillary Clinton needs an excuse for forgetting to go to Michigan and Wisconsin, and my family gets to pay for it, all the legal fees, to testify before Congress probably 4 times, saying the same thing 4 times over to 3 different bodies because Congress can't talk to each other.
How much have you had to pay personally to respond to this?
Well, right now I've only got 1 hearing under my belt. I've got Senate Intelligence wants me for 2 hearings, and now we hear from Dianne Feinstein that she wants me at the Senate Judiciary. Each one of those hearings can be $30,000, so I'm $30,000 down now, and in the end I'll end up paying legal fees that equal more than I make in a year.
That's horrifying. What do you make? It's
horrifying, and you know what? I've got kids to raise. Yeah. You know, I live in flyover country, Tucker. I live in Buffalo. We don't make Washington money or New York money. And all, you know, this smear first, ask questions later mentality of Washington is destroying not just my family, but a lot of families.
On totally ridiculous grounds, Russian agents. It's absurd. What do you make of apparently what the memo says, that the Obama administration used allegations of collusion with Russia in order to justify surveillance of the Trump campaign?
You know, I listened to what you said as we led up to this segment, and I'm just disgusted by it. But I got to tell you, I completely expected it. I've been looking forward to this memo coming out ever since I heard of it. Thank God for Chairman Nunes. Thank God for him. I mean, he's endured so much, you know, vitriol and insults from the left trying to stop him in this effort. I'll tell you, here's the bottom line, Tucker. I mean, Barack Obama weaponized the Department of Justice. Barack Obama politicized the FBI. The FBI, it's our nation's premier and criminal investigation organization. I know a lot of rank and file FBI members, and they're all embarrassed about this. The DOJ completely weaponized. We saw it go down with the IRS as well. We saw how the weaponized Department of Justice went after people like Congressman Michael Grimm and Dinesh D'Souza and many others. This has really been on its way to happening for quite some time, and we're at the most politicized level of our DOJ and FBI that in my lifetime it's got to be.
It sure seems that way. So I don't know if you can respond to this final question because you're the subject of a lot of attention. But Carter Page, he was the pretext for apparently a lot of this spying on the Trump campaign. I've just only seen him during his MSNBC interviews. He doesn't look to me like a very credible Russian agent. Did you ever see any indication that he was speaking to the Russians, that he was speaking in Russian, had a shortwave radio in his attic? I mean, was there anything about Carter Page that made you think he was a mole?
No, in fact, we never saw Carter Page in Trump Tower. He was like George Papadopoulos, a member of a rarely meeting policy committee, volunteers who would come in for one meeting a month. I mean, Carter Page, I mean, he's legit. Knows about Russia. People in Russia know him. He was in business there. And I see him on television. I see him walking away from these inquiries on the Hill. I got to tell you, first I was kind of, palms up about the guy, but now I feel really bad for him. And now that I'm hearing about this memo, I feel really angry for him.
Well, he said today to one of our producers here at Fox News that he welcomes the release of the memo. I bet he does. But thanks,
I bet
Michael.
He does. And I'll tell you what, if anybody needs to get some justice out of this, it's guys like Carter Page.
I agree. I think he's been shafted. Great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, the Me Too movement continues to expose some of its biggest advocates. Amazingly enough, Hillary Clinton's former campaign chair has confirmed in public that Clinton intervened to protect a harasser against the wishes of women on her staff. You couldn't make that up if you tried. We've got details next.
He had a long-time fear of being poisoned. One reason why he liked to eat at McDonald's. Nobody knew he was coming, and the food was safely pre-made.
That's it. We've got it. That's the one.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
The Grammy's in the bag?
In the bag.
Hillary Clinton was a big star at the one place she would be a big star, the hyper-politicized Grammy Awards. If you missed the Grammy Awards, you were not alone. Many people did. Ratings fell to record lows last night. It was fitting that Hillary Clinton would be celebrated by show business. She's got one thing in common with Hollywood. Both of them appear to have a sexual harassment problem. Patty Sleece Doyle, who you may remember managed Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign, not a staffer on it, she managed it, campaign manager. She said today that she wanted senior advisor Bernd Strider fired for sexual harassment, but Hillary wouldn't have it. Watch.
I did my due diligence. I interviewed all the parties involved. I looked at the evidence. I looked at some emails that he had sent. I had looked at other documents and came to the conclusion that there was sexual harassment involved, that the young woman was very credible, and my recommendation to the senator was to fire her. And I was overruled.
So she overruled you personally?
I was overruled, yes.
Wow. Meanwhile, Hillary also praised women in a video that we're not going to characterize, but instead play, and you can decide for yourself.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for your feminism, for your activism, and all I can hope is you keep up the really important good work.
And can you say the name of the activist bitches supporting bitches?
And let me just say, this is directed to the activist bitches supporting bitches. So let's go.
Mark Stein is on tonight to receive thanks for his feminism and his activism. He's an author and a columnist, and he joins us. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Tucker. Good to see you.
What do you make of that video?
Well, that last one I think is kind of pathetic because it's like watching some weird kind of Golden Girls on Meet the Press, where you've got old broads or Betty White doing a rapping granny routine. It's kind of pathetic, the kind of old broads talking dirty thing, and it's not just pathetic, but it's actually ridiculous on the day that Hillary has been exposed yet again, not as a champion of women, but as an enabler of men who prey on women.
Well, see, that was the thing. It wasn't even the naughty word that bugged me. She's got a salty mouth. I kind of like that about her. It's like the one thing I like about her. What bothered me was that she describes herself as a feminist, and I'm thinking, well, compared to you, I'm the feminist. If there was some guy in my office who was hassling women in the office, I'd can him. She didn't. So how does she get to be a feminist?
Well, you'd almost get the impression that if you've turned a blind eye to one predator for 40 years, it becomes very easy to turn a blind eye to all of them. And in that sense, that's what she shares with those people at the Grammy Awards, that it's a power thing. It's a class thing and it's a power thing. And that's the way it's always been. The women that Bill Clinton hit on, whether they were interns or whether they were low-grade staffers, she regarded them as trash. Her advisor said, you drag a $100 bill through a trailer park, there's no telling what you'll find. And that's what she and guys like Harvey Weinstein are all agreed on. And it's a problem for the Democrat Party. Kirsten Gillibrand, who is apparently serious about running for president, was on TV, I think it was today or yesterday, and she was doing her thing, oh, you know, believe all women, zero tolerance, all the rest of it. And then she was asked, well, wait a minute, what about Hillary Clinton? Because she's still worried that the Clintons are powerful enough to take the tire iron to her in the back alley. It would be in the interests of the Democrat Party for them to tell Hillary Clinton, stop doing your Catskills, leaden Catskills shtick on TV every 10 minutes and go to the Falkland Islands for the next 3 years, and you might give us a sporting chance.
Leaden Catskills shtick. It took 48 years for me to hear that phrase, but I'm so glad it was worth the wait.
Tucker, politicians shouldn't do comedy, and if they do it, they should do it once every 30 or 40 years. Hillary's doing every show. She should say, I'm not going to do it again until the year 2057. She'd be doing us all a favor.
Mark Stein, you've done us a favor. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Julie Alvin is Digital Lifestyle Director at Time, and she joins us tonight. Julie, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk to you about this because I know you're a feminist and I think you're smart.
I hear you're a feminist these days.
Well, actually, compared to Hillary, I am a feminist, and that's the kind of striking thing. I mean, at a certain point, you think, well, what does it mean to be a feminist? I thought it was to kind of be for equality for women, to be on the side of women. Someone attacks women, you stand up for women. I mean, if those are the qualifications, then I certainly qualify, and she doesn't. So I'm starting to think maybe it's really about abortion. The more you're for abortion, the more you're a feminist. If you're against abortion, you're not a feminist. I think that's true, isn't it?
I think you're missing the point. So, look, if these allegations against Bernd Strader are true and they were brought to Hillary Clinton and she did not have him removed from the campaign, that is not something that I can defend. That is disappointing, and I would hope that she would make a different decision today. That's not something that I am going to defend her for.
But why is it not appalling? Wait, hold on. Why is it, you say you're not going to defend it as disappointing. Why is it not disgusting? So her female campaign manager, Petty Sleaze Doyle, who I think is a person of good faith, I don't think she's lying, said, I told her, you got to fire this guy. He's hassling this woman. And Hillary said, no. If it was anybody else, wouldn't we say that's like wrong? Isn't it worse than disappointing?
It is wrong. I believe that she should have fired this man. I think that, we're seeing obviously people across media and Hollywood and government facing repercussions for their actions and losing their jobs in the wake of this huge wave of sexual harassment that we're learning about. Although I will make the point that our president has been accused by 19 women of behavior like this, and he remains the president of the United States. But anyway, that aside, Bernd Strader should have lost his job.
But hold on, you're right. And he said the other day, he's like, I'm not a feminist. It doesn't give him a pass, but at least he's not a hypocrite. If Hillary says she's a feminist and she puts up with her husband, was accused of rape, by the way, credibly, and then puts up with this harasser in her office, why does she get to call herself a feminist? I'm totally confused. I'm serious.
I mean, I think that if you would like to call yourself a feminist in comparison to Hillary Clinton, I would ask, you know, did you fight for the Paycheck Fairness Act? Did you pass the Violence Against Women Act? Did you pass the No Ceilings Initiative that put $600 million towards education for women worldwide?
I treat women, hold on, but I treat actual living women well, and she doesn't. So why doesn't that make me more of a...
I don't know that that's true. I believe this is an error. This is a black mark on her record. It's disappointing. I am not defending that action at all, but I do not think that it erases a lifetime of legislation that supports women.
Well, not a life. She wasn't in Congress very long, actually. It's not a lifetime, but it's a short window. I think it was 8 years, but whatever. Okay. She was never in Congress except for a term and a half as senator from New York. But the point, here's the point. She, in a number of different provable ways and instances, she attacked women who tried to report sexual harassment by her husband. She made excuses for a guy accused of rape. If I did that, I would expect to be attacked, and she's lauded as a feminist hero. I'm just wondering, like, what's the line? Like, what can't you do if you're Hillary to lose your feminism
I think that she has been attacked for the way that she, you know, is behaving in this situation, or behaved in this situation during her campaign. Again, I absolutely think that it's upsetting and disappointing that she did not have this person immediately removed from her campaign. There's certainly questions about the way she acts towards her husband's accusers, although some of that has not been legitimately corroborated. But it does not erase a lifetime of service for women when it comes to equal pay, when it comes to women's health care, when it comes to education.
No, I know
it does not erase that.
You like the legislation, but like, would you say Ted Kennedy, who killed a woman, was he a feminist?
I don't know that I could comment on Ted Kennedy's feminism. That's a good question.
I don't know. I mean, when he died, you know, he was lovingly written about, eulogized by the left as a champion of women. And I thought, well, I mean, there are good parts about Ted Kennedy for sure. I'm not, you know, I kind of like Ted Kennedy personally, but he killed a woman. He literally killed a woman. There's no dispute about that. And then he lied about it. How does he get to be a feminist? That's my only question.
I'm not calling him a feminist. I'm calling Hillary Clinton a feminist, despite her misgivings.
Well, you got to call me one, too, and I hope when you come back you will, Julie.
I don't know. You're going to have to prove it to me. You're going to have to prove that to me.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The Trump administration is willing to provide a path to citizenship for dreamers, millions of them. So why are progressives shrieking and calling it racist? One of them joins us next. The White House's proposed immigration deal gives a major concession to Democrats, amnesty, a pathway to citizenship not simply for DACA beneficiaries, but for about 1 million other people and maybe more. But instead of being happy about getting what they asked for, Democrats as a group are rejecting it out of hand. They claim the deal demands increased border security and less unskilled immigration. And that's an effort to hold dreamers hostage and is itself a form of white supremacy. The ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi of San Francisco, went on the floor recently to call this, in effect, racism. Is it? Henry Fernandez is a fellow at the Center for American Progress, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Fernandez, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Always good to be here, Tucker.
So we talk about immigration a lot with guests, but you're a little different because I think you take the subject very seriously. You think about it. You have for a long time. You know, you sort of know what the numbers are. And I'm not paying you false compliments. I'm serious. So I want to ask you an overview question because I think you can handle it. You probably thought about it. So the year I was born, 1969, the United States had 202 million people living in this country. 2015, the population had gone to 324 million. That's more than 60% increase. 3 years later, it's even higher than that. 2065, it's expected to be at 441 million. That's a 118% increase. Now, all of that pretty much is due to immigration. And my question to you is, what's the right number? How many people, immigration shapes the number of people who are here. It drives it. How many people should live in this country?
That's a really interesting question. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking through that, but you know, I feel like it's certainly one worth discussing and trying to figure out what our policies should be with regard to growth. Perfectly rational.
But isn't that kind of the central question? I mean, population defines everything in a country. By the way, the cost of infrastructure and schools and medical care, all of that is connected directly to population, and it just changes the country completely. Why haven't you thought about that?
Well, I guess what I'm interested in right now is a much smaller group of people, just kind of very narrow issue, which is these dreamers, and making sure that they have a pathway to citizenship here in the U.S. So that's really been my focus. I haven't thought. You clearly think in really big ways, and I try
just
to
because
be
just
narrow
because
and
it's
focused.
completely changed the country that I grew up in some ways for better, I think, and in some ways
Largely for better. I mean, it's a more just
maybe. I mean,
country.
you could debate it. In some ways, definitely for worse. Crowding is bad, right? Beijing is a disaster. Puget Sound is beautiful. I mean, population is related to that, so density matters. So here's my question: if you're for the dreamers, then you must be pretty happy with this proposal from the White House, which gives them amnesty. Why should, and we were led to believe that all the left wanted was amnesty for these people who are brought here as children against their will, and I kind of got that. But now Democrats are saying all of their relatives have to come here too and get public services. So like how does that work?
I don't think anybody's actually arguing for all their relatives or for public services. Look, there's actually a very interesting bill that's out there right now, very bipartisan, from Congressman Hurd, Republican, Congressman Aguiar, Democrat. It has 52 co-sponsors, 26 Democrats, 26 Republicans in the House, and it does exactly what we need to do right now, which is focus on DREAM and making sure dreamers have a pathway to citizenship and border security. That seems like a fair trade, and what the Trump administration has tried to do, really driven by Stephen Miller, who seems to be the puppet master on this, is to try to throw in the kitchen sink here every kind of crazy
try to get control of our
nativist
borders.
extremist idea.
That's extremist.
Well, I think I just said that it should include border security. I think that's a fair
nativist.
trade,
I mean, spare me. Let me ask you a serious question, though. So I hear from a lot of people, I think including you, that it's in America's economic interest to let these people in. And they're largely from Mexico, not entirely, but the majority are from Mexico. So if that's true, if a lot of low-wage labor makes a country rich, then why isn't Mexico rich?
I guess, are we talking about the dreamers, or are you
I'm talking not simple. I'm talking specifically about the dreamers, but you could apply the same question to about 1 million people we admit every year for the sake of giving employers lower wages. Why aren't the countries from which they're coming rich if low-wage labor is the key to prosperity?
Well, I don't know, about your family, but let's look at most American families and how they got here through immigration, which is that people come to the United States because of what it says on the Statue of Liberty, right? That they're coming because they are coming for economic opportunity. They're coming because they're fleeing despotism. This is how the Irish wound up here. This is how the Italians, how the Chinese.
I'm sorry. I'm just asking a really simple question about the people who live here now, and a lot of them are from other countries. There are a lot of really decent immigrants who live here and are citizens. How are they, how are all of us going to benefit economically from continued low-wage immigration? I'm not asking whether it's morally great to let people in. Of course it is. I'm asking about the economic benefit, and I never get an answer to that because, as you know, there isn't one.
Well, no, actually, I mean, if we look at immigration, it's pretty consistently agreed upon by virtually all economists that immigration significantily benefits the U.S. economy. If we take just one issue.
That's a lie. You shouldn't say that because it's not. It's just not true. It's actually, I spent a lot of time on this. It's not true.
So let's take one issue, right?
We're almost out of time, so give it to me quick.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Okay, just the Social Security Trust Fund. It relies heavily on immigrants to subsidize the large number of people who are retiring now. So actually, it's not a lie, and I would never lie to you, Tucker. That's not what I do.
Okay. Henry, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Good to be here, Tucker.
State of the Union isn't happening till tomorrow, but some NYU students are surprisingly sure they already saw the State of the Union speech. And by the way, they hated it.
One of the craziest moments when he started a build the wall chant with all the Republicans that were there.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous.
I think it's absolutely crazy.
The fact that he started a chant, he's big on those.
What did you think of President Trump's State of the Union address the other day? It's a pretty fascinating speech, didn't you think? The left was absolutely furious about it. Wait, the State of the Union hasn't happened yet. I think it's tomorrow, right? Yeah. Well, don't tell kids at NYU. They told Campus Reform that they had seen the speech, and by the way, of course, they hated it.
Some people were saying that it was the most racist State of the Union that's ever happened. What was your reaction to everything that was said?
I didn't watch it because I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
Quite racist at the very least, if not up there with most racist.
One of the craziest moments when he started a build the wall chant with all the Republicans that were there.
Okay.
People on social media were accusing him of basically using the State of the Union as a campaign event.
Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. I think it's absolutely crazy.
The fact that he started a chant, he's big on those.
Do you think he's going to follow through with the things that he promised last night?
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, there are a couple explanations for this, possibly. Either students at our country's most elite schools are totally full of it, or they've invented time travel in their spare time and are using it to watch speeches early, probably buy lotto tickets, too. We'll decide which is more likely. We'll leave that to you. New York University is one of the most liberal schools in America, maybe the world, but even there, at least one person is continuing to refuse to conform. And it's made life hard for him. Ironically, he is a professor of global liberal studies. His name is Michael Rechtenwald. He's suing the school and several other professors. He accuses them of launching a harassment campaign against him after he condemned political correctness on campus. That professor, Michael Rechtenwald, joins us now. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So tell us what you did to earn the ire of your colleagues.
Well, what I did is started an anonymous Twitter account, and I started tweeting criticisms of PC culture, social justice ideology on campus, which was really coming home to roost at NYU with the enforcement of a bias reporting hotline, safe spaces, the no platforming or shutting down of speakers like Ianopoulos and so forth. And so I started tweeting, and all hell broke loose.
So what kinds of things did you tweet? Did you threaten anyone with violence or try to prevent other people from talking?
Not at all. I merely made criticisms about what was happening, not just at NYU, but all across the country. And as you know, the semester and the year went on, I was vindicated by what took place over the year 2016-17 with as the campus craziness escalated, and you know, you had riots by the time Berkeley happened and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I was just making critiques of an institutional ideological adoption and the mechanisms to enforce it. I mentioned no persons by name, no groups, no races, no identities at all. And I was immediately, within 2 days of an interview appearing, I was called into the dean's office, and I was told that the interview had nothing to do with my Twitter account or the publicity I was receiving, and yet immediately it went to that topic, and I was told that people were concerned about my mental well-being. So,
because you disagreed with them,
because I must be crazy. Because I disagreed with them, and I was put on paid leave. I really strongly encouraged to take a paid leave of absence to absent myself